Welcome to In the Margins, where we spark connection through stories. I'm your host, Lyn Donahue, and each week I invite guests to step outside the lines and into the margins with me. You'll hear the untold stories, the stories of risk and reward, of triumph and trial, and everything in between. Thanks for joining me. Let's dive in. Welcome to In the Margins. Thank you so much for being here today. I am especially excited about this episode because it marks the end of season 1, and it has been such a wonderful journey and a period of learning, definitely a learning curve. And I want to reach out to each of you as listeners and thank you for supporting me and In the Margins. We appreciate you and continue to ask you to like, share, and follow In the Margins wherever you get your podcasts. Today, on our final episode, I am excited to welcome Karin Tramm. Karin is an educator, writer, military spouse, and author of 100 Days Smart. Karin's life has taken her from Guam to Germany, to the Philippines, Spain, and Italy, teaching and living within diverse cultures and communities. Throughout her journey, she's continually moved between roles, places, and identities, adapting, learning, and creating connection wherever she goes. Karin's lived experience offers a window into what it means to navigate constant change with openness and grace, especially during seasons of upheaval like the earliest days of the pandemic. Today, we're going to explore the moments that shaped her, the inner shifts we rarely talk about, and the wisdom she's gathered along the way. Karin, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Lyn. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me as a guest on In the Margins.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the plug. So let's kind of dive in and let our listeners get to know you a little bit before we dive into your story some more. I could not possibly list all of your accolades and get them right, but you have done a lot, you've won a lot, and you've been a lot of places and lived a lot of places. So just give us a little bit of background if you don't mind.
So I'm a retired teacher from DODEA, from the Department of Defense. I started teaching in Guam a long time ago, and not for the Department of Defense, but just in their regular school system. I later lived in the Philippines. That's where I met my husband. He was in the Navy. And moved to Germany, and he moved to Naples, Italy. We got married during that time, and then I was able to move with him and teach in many of the places where he was stationed in Spain. And we went to Iceland. I didn't teach there, and in Vicenza, where he retired, and we stayed for 16 years, and he became a teacher too. So that's just kind of a little basic. We have spent most of our life overseas on military bases, a little bit in the States. He went to school in Monterey, and we were there for 2 years. That's where I had my kids. We spent a little time in Virginia, but most of it has been overseas.
Okay, great. And you have 2 sons, is that correct?
I have 2 boys, Ian and Will, and Ian is my oldest, and he lives in Bangkok. He is a teacher at a private prep school there right outside of Bangkok. And my son Will lives in Miami, and he is an environmental consultant with Davy Company and a musician. He's living the dream.
What a great combination. Well, yeah, thank you. I am a bit envious, I think, of all of your experience living overseas. I know that really is enriching, creates a sense of depth and even empathy and compassion for different cultures I guess we can get that some when we visit, but when you're immersed in a culture, that's really special.
It does change your perspective about a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. So from, I know you've had so many experiences as a person, as an educator. Will you tell us, for the listeners, for those who aren't exactly familiar with the terminology and the acronyms, tell me again, the Department of Education.
It's DODEA, so it's Department of Defense Educational Activity. Prior to that, it was DODDS, Department of Defense Dependent Schools, and it did change its acronym there during my service, but it's the same entity, DODS or DODEA, same thing.
Okay, gotcha. Well, it was a mouthful, even when they changed it.
Yes.
So, just looking back across your experiences, what do you think has shaped you most as a person, not just as an educator, but as a person?
So actually, I feel like there's probably two things I have to say regarding that. The first one was definitely when I moved to Guam to start my teaching career. And outside of being an educator, I just made this big leap. I didn't have a job here in the States, and I graduated from college and I borrowed $500 from my parents. I bought a one-way ticket and I went to Guam and hoped I could get a job. Now I did have a friend out there, so I didn't, land cold. I did have someone I knew there, but
Yeah.
thank goodness it worked out. And I was there for 2 years, and I that was my first time with my own apartment and a real big girl job, that kind of thing. So I feel like that was really one time that I really stretched it. I call it my out of the box period because that was really a time when I was far away. I couldn't call home. We had a phone. It couldn't even call off island. So I couldn't call
Oh,
mommy.
wow.
I couldn't call daddy and say, what's wrong with my car? None
Yeah.
of that. I was really on my own. And I feel like I became very independent through that
Mm.
time period. The other time I would say is when we were in California and I became a parent when I had my children. And, I have to say, when we decided we were going to start our family, I was like, I got this. I've been teaching for a while. I have a master's
Yeah.
degree in early childhood education. I got this. Well, as a parent that you should never say that, because I quickly found out I knew nothing, and that all the things that I said my kid would never do, okay, they're going to do it in public 10 times. So that was really a learning experience to me, because I didn't know anything. I learned a lot from my kids. They were, in fact, my teachers, and what you learn from one, you might not learn from another one. Because you have a lot of children. You have five, yeah.
Yes.
So that they're all different and they're all teaching you different things, and it's very humbling when
Yeah.
you think you know everything and you find out you know nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's not a book for it. I know if you're somewhat like me, I like to read about things and get prepared. Even the Girlfriend's Guide to Pregnancy. Did you read that by
I
chance?
did, yeah.
Which was wonderful, and I think it offered some insight that I would not have known. But you can't
Nothing
tell.
prepares you until
No,
you're there.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. You
That was
just don't know till you know.
that's right. And then you still might not know.
And then you still might not know, right? So, what did you find that you were able to sort of let go of as a mom and just let your boys be boys?
Well, those things that you said you were never going to do it. Well, I
Mhm.
guess one thing too for me personally was like having a clean house, not a
Yeah.
clean, but a neat and orderly, being able to reprioritize what was important and what wasn't.
Yeah.
And I did have a period of time when I stayed home with my boys, and I did miss teaching, but I did know also that teaching would always come back, but that time in their life never
Mm.
would. And so that was a
Yeah.
big thing I let go of for a while, was feeling like I had to have that professional piece of my life, that teacher piece,
Mhm.
when I didn't. I really wanted to be teacher to my kids. And
Yeah.
honestly, I didn't even send them to preschool because I wanted to be their preschool teacher. So I did. And so I kept them with me. We did little play groups so they could socialize, but I really wanted
Yeah.
that time with them. I felt
Yeah.
like it was important and I would never get it back.
Yeah. And you don't, and then it's gone.
Right. Right.
I mean, just the saying is time flies, and it just does.
It does. And all of those things that you think, oh my gosh, look at this mess, or I can't believe you're having this meltdown in the store, and all of those moments that you think, please let this be over. And then when it is over, you're like, wow, that happened fast.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does.
It goes by very fast.
Yeah.
Yes. So how was it raising a family overseas? I guess you were in Italy for the greater portion of your
We
child
were
raising.
now. we moved to Iceland when they were little. Will was 7 months and Ian had just turned 2 when we got to Iceland. And we
Okay.
were there for a couple of years. And then we moved back to the States while Gene was deployed. Then we went on to Spain and we were in Spain for 5 years. They both started school there. That's where
Okay.
I went back to work teaching when they were both in school. And then I talked my husband into retiring so we could move to Italy because I got a job offer there. And
Okay.
he was in a place in his career where he could retire. So I moved to Vicenza with the boys. And then he
Hmm.
followed when he retired a few months later.
Okay.
We were there 16 years, and
Okay.
that's what my kids consider home. I think that's where they
Mm.
grew up. That's where they went to high school and graduated.
Yeah.
That's where I've lived the longest in my life, 16 years. So
Well,
it was home in a lot of ways, even though, home is also in the States. Home is a lot of different places. It's hard to say one thing is home.
so as you were teaching, let's see, I was thinking about how the school experience in the States compared to the school experience overseas. Tell us a little bit about the type of school you were teaching at. And did your boys also go to the same school?
They did. And
Mm.
so this will be hard for me because I never taught in a stateside school.
Okay.
But the overseas schools are run by the Department of Defense.
Okay.
Their test scores are really high, and I'll say that right away, but I'll also say that that's not really the main thing about those schools. Those
Yeah.
schools are supported by parents who have a job, they have
Mm.
health insurance, they have a place to live. No one lives in their car.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
so many good things that are about this, and of course, there are challenges, there are deployments, there are other things.
Hmm.
Living overseas in itself is a challenge, but the parents really value education, and I feel very supportive. When we had uh, parent teacher conferences, they are automatically given time off to go and attend that. It's an expectation. You feel very, very supported in that way. I had great parent volunteers. I taught kindergarten
Okay.
for yeah, almost the whole time.
Wow.
So the facilities are great. The supplies, I don't want to say we never went without, but we
Yeah.
were very well taken care of and able to order things we needed. I had, I mentioned before, started my teaching career in Guam, and that was
Mm.
not in the Department of Defense schools. That was in their local school system,
Okay.
and things were really different there.
Yeah.
And there were times when we only had purple construction paper and popsicle sticks. Once I started working for Dodia, I realized things could be a lot different. So I was
Yeah.
always very satisfied with the support and the supplies and the students and just the entire experience of being there. I can remember I had
Yeah.
this little reader. It was called Lights, and it had a picture of the Eiffel Tower on the front of it. And we sat down at our little reading table, and one of my 5-year-olds said, "Oh, that's the Eiffel Tower. I've been there." And I was like, "Yes, you have." I love that they are getting that cultural experience and that broad world citizen view at an early
Yeah.
age. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes, my
That's
kids went to the same school that I worked in, which was good and not good because I was always in their business. I knew everything that was going on. So, but also it allowed me to have their same schedule and we went to work back and forth together. When we lived in Spain, we lived right across the street from the school. So we walked to school together in the
oh.
morning and I could send them home in the afternoon and follow up with them. It was an ideal situation.
Did you experience any sort of reinvention of self, moving from having grown up in the States to deciding who you are in overseas?
There's always a change every
Yeah.
time you move, something new. I would say my biggest reinvention was when we moved to Iceland. My boys were both small, and that was the first time that we moved when I said, I'm not going to work outside of the
Mm.
house. I'm going to stay home with those boys. So we got there. And my husband Gene said, "Well, maybe you want to take some classes so you can get out of the house and have some adult conversation." And I was like, "Not doing that." He kept urging me on. So
Yeah.
I went down to the Navy campus and I talked to this delightful man down there who talked me into taking a class in this program. And I said, "Okay, fine. just to make everyone leave me alone. I'm going to do it. And I did it and I loved it. And so I
Good.
enrolled in the program. And so all of a sudden I was a graduate student again through for the program. I had to do a project. And I thought, well, gosh, what am I going to do? Gina and I, we like to take the boys out and explore the island a little bit. And I thought, well, maybe I can write some travel articles for the base paper, the White Falcon, and talk about places to take your kids because Iceland is a really easy place to not go anywhere. It's cold, it's windy,
Yeah.
you do want to just kind of stay home. But
Yeah.
it's a fascinating place, especially geologically. So I started writing for the newspaper. I pitched to them and they said, yep. So I started writing for the newspaper, little travel articles once a week with a picture of different places that you could take your kids or your family and do little hikes or visit the zoo or whatever. And I took those, I love photography and the light there is so beautiful.
Oh,
So
good.
I took some of those pictures and I blew them up and I put them in our stairwell. And people came to me and they said, are you selling pictures? And I said, no. But then I said, yes. So then I started a photography business. And, it sounds like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. But it all just happened organically and it was all connected. And I could do it at home with my kids and I still could take them to the library every week and I still could do little outings with them and then write about it and make it part of this other process. So I would say that's probably my biggest reinvention, but also a really important time for me because it let me know it made me feel it gave me confidence as a writer and writer too that you feel very vulnerable when you write.
Yeah.
Even if it's just travel writing, you feel vulnerable, but especially memoir writing, you're really putting it all out there. So when I did get to that point, when I wrote a memoir, I had to tell myself, this is okay. You've done this kind of thing before. It's all right. And I think that really did help me get over that hump of feeling so vulnerable. Maybe get halfway over the hump. You always feel it, but that helped me move forward with that project.
Wow, that's great. I'm assuming that your photography was with an actual camera and not an iPhone or an Android.
I'm just going to say that was the days before iPhones, a long time ago. But yeah, it was with an actual camera, and the light there is gorgeous. And I've always been interested in photography, and I just, sometimes you're just presented with this situation, and you think, why not? And that's kind of how that all happened. So I will say, Iceland was probably the hardest place that I've ever lived. It was dark for a lot of time in the winter but it had its beauty too. And out of feeling that it was hard, I think I got the most reward out of that place.
Wow. Wow. I've not ever been to Iceland, but I have
Yet.
heard that yet. That's right. Yet. Leading up to the next few years, as we, moved into the pandemic era, you were in Italy.
I was in Italy.
I know that was significant. I mean, it was significant for everyone, of course. It's quite a mark of time. But as a teacher and as a teacher overseas, experiencing something that really your fellow Americans had not yet experienced. Tell us some about that.
It was like having the rug pulled out from under you. It happened very fast for us in Italy. It was our 100th day of school, which lends itself to the title of my book. It was our 100th day of school in kindergarten. That's a big deal. And I put my kids on the bus and I said, I'll see you Monday. And never saw them again, other than on the computer screen. And things happened so quickly there. It was really hard for me to keep up. And finally, one day, our friends and family in the States were reaching out saying, what's going on? What's happening? And because we were a little bit ahead of everybody, I was trying to say, okay, well, this happened on this day. I couldn't keep up. It was just too much and too fast. So I asked my husband one morning, I said, could you bring me a legal pad? I needed to make some notes. So I just started writing and keeping notes. And I actually ended up writing for 100 days. And that's right when we came out of the first lockdown. And that's what morphed into my book, my memoir. It was just the beginning of the pandemic, but it was a lot of, it helped me to write because I was anxious and I didn't know what was going on. No one did. But it also really turned out to be an interesting record of that time because it's, what happened with us on the military base. I kept thinking this is really unprecedented and maybe one day somebody will want to read about it. So
Yeah.
there it went. And I wrote it down, and it just morphed into that book. And that was very helpful
Yeah.
for me in the classroom.
Yeah.
I was not good with technology.
Mm-hmm.
I taught kindergarten, and I just felt like when my kids were at school, they deserve real face time with me. They have enough screen time at home. So I hadn't
Sure.
really done a lot of computer based instruction with them, because I think hands on learning is so important, and
Yeah.
having that relationship with your kids is so important. So I had
Mm.
not a lot of experience with that.
Yeah.
And as we needed to move into that quickly, I did not know what was going on. And I really had to rely on my aide. She
Yeah.
was an angel, still is. I had to rely on parents. I had to rely on some of my younger colleagues to just kind of bail me out sometimes and say, okay,
Yeah.
you need to do this and this and this.
Yeah.
And I had to also have that attitude shift and think, okay, I was used to being one of the more experienced teachers. I had been there for a while. People would come to me and say, oh, how do you do this? How do you do this? And I was there with the answers. Well, this time I was not there with the answers, and I needed to be
Mm.
able to step back and give myself some grace, allow
Yeah.
myself to fail, which I did sometimes. I'm a perfectionist in my classroom. I taught kindergarten, so I wanted my ducks in a row every day. Because
Yeah.
if you have to stop and deal with something, oh, you lose them. They're going to eat you for
Mm-hmm.
lunch. So
Mm-hmm.
you really need to be on your game, because it's short attention span theater in that classroom.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't used to that situation, and I had to really step back and go, okay, it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to try this and fail. You
Yeah.
know, so many things happened that I didn't anticipate. And like I said, I'm an organizer. I had no idea how to organize that. So
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
me, it was a big learning curve. I feel like we got there, but it was with a lot of work, and I had a lot of learning to do. Again, I was
Yeah.
not the teacher, I was the learner.
Yeah. Well, I think really we all were in a sense.
Yeah.
I can identify with perfectionism, and I remember maybe my breaking point, just of thinking I could do everything, didn't need to ask questions. I didn't need to ask for help. And it was when I had twins and a 2-year-old. And you go from what is it? Defense to one-on-one to zone. That's what it is.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy times.
You just have, learning to ask for help is really, really important. I
And
know.
accepting failure for me.
Sure. Yes. Yes. One of mine was still in elementary school during that time, our youngest, and I remember everyone having trouble with the technology. There wasn't even any time to put a system together,
Right.
and so everyone was flying by the seat of their pants, doing the best that they could. And so for you, with that was right after your 100 days.
So that was the last day that we were in school together,
Was
was the
your
100th
right?
day of school.
Right.
And then on that night, actually, I saw a little news article that said, "Oh, there was a death in Italy in this town called Vo." And I thought, well, that's interesting, because there's a Vo right next to us. It must be a
Yeah.
different Vo. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that it was in our backyard, but in fact it was. And then all these rumors started flying over the weekend. The Italian schools were closed, and we didn't know if the
Mm,
American schools were going to close. And by Monday, yes, in fact they had. And I can remember laying in bed, and it's kind of like a snow day, but I wasn't excited, I was
yeah.
anxious.
Yeah.
And then we were off Tuesday, and on Wednesday they asked us to report back to school and to be ready on Thursday for virtual learning. I'm like, what day? Really? and
Yeah.
and so we did it. We just jumped in and did whatever we could in those beginning days. And then they said, and you need to be ready for maybe being on the computer the next week too, but also we might come back, so you need to have your classrooms ready too. And we're like,
Right.
oh, okay. So every week it was like that. Okay, well, probably we're going to be virtual for another week, but after spring break we'll probably be back. Well, finally they told us on the 1st of May we were never coming back. And I guess
Yeah.
we all knew it by then,
Yeah.
but it just seeing it on an email.
Yeah.
It was sad because I missed that and I missed my kids, and it was hard to have that sense of community that's so important with young children.
Sure.
It's hard
Yeah.
to do that on a computer. I think that
Yes.
we did a good job at it, but it was a challenge. Then over the summer, we got an email that said you're coming back face to face in the fall. So we just
Mm.
had that very short period of being virtual, and
Yeah.
then boom, we were back face to face in the fall. We had 6-foot tables and no carpets and masks for two
Oh,
years. And
wow.
it was frustrating for me as a
Mm-hmm.
teacher. I missed my carpet time with my kids,
Yeah.
but I had to remember they don't know any different. When they come to kindergarten, that's their first experience. And so
Yeah.
it was really up to me to make it fun and interesting and make them love school, because really to me that was the most important job, was to make them love school, because once they love school, everything else is easy.
I don't want to forget to ask you to tell our listeners about how the name of your book, 100 Days Smart, how that came about, because I really like that story and its origin.
So yeah, so it's because we started, it was that 100th day of school when we found out something's going on. That was the
Right.
last day I saw my kids. And then I did journal for 100 days. We came out of our first lockdown, the first of three. We came out of on May 31st, and it was exactly 100 days. So I stopped my journaling there. And so this is a very small piece of the pandemic, because it went on for 2 years after that, that
Yeah.
we were, like I said, in a different way at school, teaching in a different way. But
Yeah.
the book is only 100 days, and that's where it came from. That's 100 days smart is something we would always say to our kids.
Yeah.
Oh, you're 98 days smart. You're 99 days smart. Oh, you're 100
Yes.
days smart. And that was such a big deal. And this
Hmm.
time it really was a big deal.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was looking for. I love that that's part of what you were telling your kindergartners just routinely.
Right.
And you're 100 days smart. And I just thought that was very clever. A good way to put a title on a book.
Well, thank
And
you.
yeah,
I
yeah,
struggled with that. It's hard to make a choice that's going to be so important.
yeah. Well, it's also nice to know, the origin and how that came about. And I know, the schools, my children's schools always celebrated, the 100th day. And it was
Right.
like, bring 100 pennies, bring
Right.
100 pieces of candy, you know,
Yes.
but I don't remember that phrase. It's not to say they didn't use it, but it just connected with me when I put that together, that's where your title had originated. Thanks for
Good.
sharing that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. So, this podcast is obviously called In the Margins, and there are times where we have an opportunity to step outside the lines of our story and into the margins really of our story, and we don't always share that part. Is there any experience that you would like to share with us? Feels like being in the margins of your own story.
Well, I think that the onset of the pandemic was when I asked my husband to bring me that legal pad.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I wrote through all the margins and everything. That was really my way of navigating that situation, and it was finished. I When I finished the 100 days, and we
Yeah.
kept going. I still continued to journal, and I continued on with that story. And I feel like there's still more story coming out of this.
Mm,
I'm I had another project that I was working on prior to that. When my son graduated from college, he took a position with Peace Corps in Thailand. And I came home during the summer to help him move out of his apartment. He had a few months to go before he was going to go over to Thailand.
mm,
So I was staying with my mom and dad, and my dad came out and he had this shoebox and he said, "You might want to look at this." And it was full of letters that I had written to my parents when I went to Guam the first time. And I was looking at them going, "Oh my gosh, this is just like yesterday. I can't believe it." So I read through them and left them there for safekeeping. And I went home to Italy when before Ian went to Thailand. He came to visit us in Italy, and my dad gave him those letters and said, "Take these to your mom." So he
yeah,
and I sat at the kitchen table and we would read them one at a time every night after dinner.
yeah.
And I
Wow.
said, "Ian, when you get to Thailand, it would be fun if you email me and we could maybe try to put something together there
Yeah.
and maybe have a little writing project, a little book." And we started doing that, but then the pandemic happened and that just went to the back burner or in the
Sure.
margins. It went away. It went away and the other book happened and the pandemic happened. And then we were in Italy 2 more years. And then we moved back to the States. I retired. My husband retired. We moved back to the States. We had a house hunt. We didn't have a house when we got here. So we had a lot of things going on. The book launched and all of those things, the dust finally settled. And I said to my son, let's get back on this and let's try to work this. And so I took my letters and I had already started transcribing them before the pandemic. He is collaborating with me on his story in the middle. And then I thought that last part, those 2 years in Italy, I got to get that out too. So I've got a lot of connections between my first 2 years teaching, my last 2 years teaching, his experience in Thailand. There's just so many different parallels with all of those stories interwoven. So I think that being able to look at those situations, like when the pandemic happened and he got evacuated, he couldn't come to Italy. Italy was locked down. He had to come back to the States and had nowhere to go. There was just so many things that happened during that time that now writing about it really helps me process what happened. And it's 2020's hindsight. So it's really able to put a lot more meaning and understanding in what happened during that time.
Yeah. A friend of ours, her daughter was in the Peace Corps as well at the very same time, and
So
was sent.
Where was she at?
She was in Benin, Africa.
Okay.
Little tiny place. I had not ever heard of it until she showed us, or at least not to recognize it. And then, of course, later, then I started hearing it referred to. But, sometimes you don't really pay attention to until you know something a little bit more. Yeah. But yeah, she was disappointed. I mean, I know that was
it was devastating for them.
Yeah.
They were pulled out and that was it, over.
Yep.
So Ian did make his way back to Thailand, not in the Peace Corps, but he's there now. And I think he just felt like he had unfinished business there and he wanted to get back. He really loved it. He was doing really well with the language and he's back. And I complain about that. And my mother feels not a bit sorry for me. She says, Karin, you went to Guam. We couldn't even call you. So I need to be careful what I say about that.
Yeah. Well, I know that's true. We want to do our own things as young people, but then we're not so sure we want our young people to do their own things.
That's exactly right. That was a funny thing, reading those letters with my son, because he would go, Mom, you did that? I was like, yeah. I think he just saw me as a different person because he just knew me as his mom and not as this person who's going to just borrow some money, get a one-way ticket and go live on the other side of the world. He didn't think about that with me, But now
I'm really glad. I'm really glad you brought that up because I had a similar experience with my book when my children read it. They didn't want to read it in advance. They wanted to wait. They had the opportunity. They could have made some changes, but they read it, once it was published. And that's a really interesting way to be on the other side of your story, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
What you said about your son just knowing you, not just as a mom, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense.
Right. No, I understand.
We all have roles, right? We all are, but it's not who we are. It's part of what we do, part of who we are. But to be seen as a human being by your children.
Vulnerable, taking risks, failing.
Yep. That's quite, I think it's a gift for your boys to have. And I feel the same way about, well, if for nothing else, for posterity's sake, it's there. And that was always in the back of my mind, but I'm glad that and our kids have a recorded account of that. And that's pretty special.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
So this next project, we'll see where we go with it. It's almost
Yeah.
done. We're tweaking it.
Okay. Okay. So it is part memoir and part the letter. I
So
mean, it's kind of give us a little bit more of a,
it is memoir.
okay.
It's told through letters. The first part of it.
Yep.
It's my first 2 years living in Guam. And there's letters, and then there's also little things that I wrote in between the letters and thoughts and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not just letters, but
Yeah.
that's the vehicle for that part of the story. The
Yeah.
middle part of the story is Ian's journey in Thailand, and that's told through email because it's a long time later, 30 years later, I guess. So that's told through email and conversations, phone conversations, and things like that.
Yeah.
And then the last part of the story is my last 2 years in Italy. So I have my 2 years in and then my 2 years out. And
Mm-hmm.
that's told through dialogue and teacher chats and messaging.
Okay.
So I wanted to try to use three different vehicles for telling the story for three
Yeah.
different time periods. Although Ian's story and the end of the story, 2 years in Italy, that's pretty close. But just to give it a little different dimension for each different part. So it is memoir. The middle part is Ian's. I guess you would call a piece of Ian's memoir. I don't know. It's narrative nonfiction. How about that?
Okay. I like it. I like it.
Yeah. So that's what it is. We'll see where it goes.
Good. Good. Well, I would encourage you to bring that to fruition and put it on the front burner.
Well, it is on the front burner now.
Okay. Good. Good.
I'm waiting for his email because we're just polishing up a couple of things that they're in the middle on his part. You
Good.
know, I'm full steam ahead on that one now. I had to get
Right.
there though. And sometimes you hear, well, you have the story, but you don't do it, and then all of a sudden you're compelled. And for sure, that's
Yeah.
how 100 Days Smart was. I just felt like
Yeah.
I was compelled to write that. I couldn't stop. This one, I started and then I had to put it on the back burner. And now I feel compelled again. Now I feel like, okay, it's time. And then people will say,
Yeah.
well, it's because it wasn't time before. And maybe
Yeah.
that's true because when I started it, I hadn't gone through those last 2 years in Italy. I didn't have the end of that story yet.
Yeah.
And now I have the end of that story, although that's not the end, it is the beginning. And that's what I'd like to call this book, is this newest beginning, because the entire thing is about beginnings. And
Yeah.
even though I'm retired and I'm no longer a teacher, it is a new beginning. I
Yeah.
am someone else now. I've moved back to the States. I'm an author. I'm doing new and different things, but it's certainly not the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely not. The story keeps going.
Right. Right.
Even though the characters may change, the personalities may change, the whole persona may change, it keeps
Right.
going.
Yeah.
Talking about it not being the right time to finish the book. Sometimes you just need that pressure, you need that external circumstance that brings you into that moment. And I'm like that with cleaning. If someone's going to come and stay with me and my husband, then I'll clean really well. But other than
So
that,
you
the
have Thanksgiving
motivation.
cleaning coming up?
Yes, I've started
Me too.
cleaning. But it is sometimes that just little extra pressure, and it feels right.
That's what I was going to say. When
Yeah.
it's time, it just feels like, okay, now I'm ready. Now I
Yeah.
can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's what it was. All of a sudden I was like, all right, let's go.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, I'll look forward to it. So, do you have I don't know, a bit of advice for anyone listening out there who wants to make a change in their life?
Change is hard.
Change is
But I
hard. Yeah.
will say that through risk comes growth. And I keep thinking back, like what I was talking about in Iceland. And sometimes when people ask you if you can do something, you just say yes. You just say, I'm going to try that, and give yourself grace. Allow yourself opportunity to fail. And instead of looking at it as a negative, look at it as a positive. So this is what I would always tell my kindergartners. What do you do when you make a mistake? You fix it. It's hard for me to take that advice, but the pandemic sure helped me do that. Or, what I tell my own children, opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
And I have to learn to take my own advice on that. And I think anybody else looking to manifest a change in their life, you just have to jump in, take that risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do it, and then figure it out. If you fail, dust yourself off and try something else because it's
Yeah.
out there. It's
Yeah.
out there. You just have to reach it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. There's always going to be risk. There's risk in not taking the risk.
That's true. That's true.
And hard, maybe it's easier said than done, but I know that there is a lot to learn from taking that leap, so to speak.
It's
And
true.
yeah.
That leap of faith, thinking, okay, I'm going to get a job. You know, going back to that in Guam, when I got there, I had sent an application in and they never answered me. And when I got there, they said, "Oh,
Oh.
where have you been? We've been waiting for you." I'm like, my parents would have been felt a lot better about me leaving had we known that, but
Yeah.
it's out there. All those things, all those goals, you just have to jump sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. You're right. Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I do want to kind of close out with our signature in the margins questions.
Okay.
And it's what are you watching? What are you listening to? And what was the other one?
Reading.
What are you reading? Right. So easy for me to say or not. But yeah. So which one do you want to start with?
What am I reading?
What are you reading?
Well, that's a hard question because I sometimes have more than one thing going on.
Okay.
So I'm reading, this is an old book. It's Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett.
Ooh.
And the reason I'm reading that book is because my son, Ian, who's in Thailand, said, "Mom, I heard so many good things about this book and I really want to read it. Do you want to do a book club?" And I said, "Yeah, that would be great." So we're reading it together. And every Sunday morning we meet via, and we talk about the book. So I'm reading that with him, and that's a great book.
Yeah.
I just finished listening to a book called Trust. I do audiobooks too. I spend a lot of time in the car. And this book, I'd never heard of it. And I just downloaded it because I was going to be in New York, and I looked up books about New York, and I saw that one, and it turned out, it was a Pulitzer Prize winner. It was so good that I listened to it, and then I listened to it again when I got to the end because there were so many things that I needed to go back and connect dots with.
Yeah.
That's a great book. I just finished it this morning for the second time.
Do you remember the author?
Yes, Hernan Diaz.
Hernan Diaz. Okay.
Yes.
That just
then beside my bed, I have one that has little short stories that I can read before it falls in my face, and it's Spouse Calls by Clary Barnes. I don't know if you know that book.
I don't.
But Terry is a writer, and she wrote for Stars and Stripes, the military newspaper. She has some of her columns are compiled into that book called Spouse Calls, and it's just joyful to read. I love it because there's many things about the military and about motherhood, and just nice little stories to help you go to sleep with something good on your mind.
Yeah.
So
I like
that's
that.
what I'm reading.
Yeah.
What I'm listening to, well, I do listen to a lot of audiobooks.
Yep.
Just finished Trust. But and music wise, I like a lot of different genres, except loud. Loud is hard for me.
Yeah.
My son, I said he's a musician in Miami, and his music is loud. When I go to his shows, he always gives me earplugs. Yeah. So he wears them too. But
which is good.
He also introduced me to a musician called Billy Strings, and I don't know if you know Billy Strings. He does bluegrass.
Familiar. Okay.
And he is a phenomenal musician. We actually went to one of his concerts together, my son Will and I, and my husband Gene. And it just reminds me, it helps me reminisce about my college days because I went to school in East Tennessee and then a year in Nashville also, and was exposed to some really beautiful bluegrass music. So when I listen to Billy Strings, he's bluegrass, but more newgrass with a, more, I don't know how you would describe it, like newgrass. I don't know if you're familiar with newgrass revival, that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah. It feels like maybe it has just a newer sound to it.
Yes, and it's really nice, and I love it because my son introduced it to me, and it was something we both enjoyed.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm listening to, and what am I watching? Oh, Chef's Table. I don't know if you've ever watched Chef's Table. I love the cooking shows, and so Chef's Table is on, I don't know, season 6 now. We started watching it when we were in Italy, and I love the stories because they're in all different countries, international cuisine. A lot of the shows are in kind of pricey restaurants, but probably I would never go to because they're out of my budget. range, but still it's fun to watch that. And like
Yeah.
Stanley Tucci when he did the Finding Italy, Searching
Mm-hmm.
for Italy. I loved those kind of shows. But
Yeah.
I watch a lot of stuff. That's what
Yeah.
we're doing right now.
Okay. Okay. Good. Well, that's great. Well,
What are
you've been
you
a.
watching right now?
What am I watching? Let's see. What am I watching? I'm watching. My husband and I love BritBox. And so we like to watch British detective
Uh-huh.
shows, and we're watching Blue Lights.
Oh,
Um,
I haven't heard of that one. We we just finished one called The Gold.
okay.
And that one is about a gold robbery. It was based on a true story of people that
Ooh,
robbed a gold place or gold, what do you call it? A place they keep gold in by Heathrow
the vault.
Airport. And
Okay.
it's really good. It was,
Okay.
I think it was 6 episodes. That was a good one.
Okay. Well, I just wrote that down because I don't know. We just the other night we were talking about the the Europeans just seem to do really great television. Skip over some and we would come back. And we're like, oh, yeah, let's do that. Or we have even, I mean, I'm maybe embarrassed to say, but not really, rewatched a whole 3 seasons of a show that we had watched before and didn't remember any of it.
Don't feel bad about that. We do the same thing.
Just watch it anyway.
Yeah, and sometimes when the new season comes out, I have to go back and watch that old season or at least the last
Hmm.
few episodes so I
Yeah.
can really get back into that program.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you on that. Oh, well, thank you again, Karin, for being here. And you've been delightful and insightful. And I
It's
appreciate
been
your
a
time.
pleasure. Thank you. I really
Good.
appreciate being a guest.
Yeah. Well, have a great rest of your day.
Happy cleaning.
Happy cleaning. Yes. All right. Bye bye. Karin, thank you for sharing your story with such honesty and depth. Your experiences and the way you've moved through change offer so much to think about. And I'm grateful that you spent this time with me today. For those listening, you can learn more about Karin's work and her book, 100 Days Smart, by visiting www.karintram.com. That's www.karintramm.com. And with that, we officially close out season 1 of In the Margins. Thank you to everyone who has listened and shared and shown up for these conversations in both big ways and small. Thank you for cheering me on from the sidelines and for your encouragement, love, and strength. It has been such a beautiful beginning, and I can't wait to bring you more stories. There will be more voices and more moments yet to come in the margins. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in season 2. Goodbye. Thanks for joining us in the margins. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Our social media handle is @podcastinginthemargins on Instagram and Facebook. And please stay connected. Like, follow, and share our podcast. What you do can help our podcast be successful. In the Margins is produced and edited by Lyn Donahue. Our guest liaison is Kim Orendor, and we're supported with gratitude by W Brand Publishing, where your story matters. Thanks for joining us.